Okay, so Sass. Sass is my windows over here. Sass stands for Syntactically Awesome Style Sheets. And yeah, it's pretty cool. I've used it, I think, in every place that I've ever worked. It's like their homepage says, CSS with superpowers. So it allows powerful extensions to the CSS language. And a really cool part, it is baked right into Rails. So you don't have to add another gem. You don't have to do anything. It's just built right into Rails. And that's since Rails 3.1. I don't think anybody here is going to be working with anything before that. That seems like ages away, but I guess it could happen. So just know that if for some reason you don't have Rails past 3.1, before that, there is a gem that allows it to be used, and it's just called Sass Rails, gem Sass Rails. So it's be a simple install, just like any other gem. But yeah, there's nothing that says anything about, oh, Sass Rails is in here by default. I just did Rails new to build this, so I guess it includes it. But with my understanding, it's already configured to use Sass. Rails projects are configured by default to use Sass because they include the Sass Rails gem by default. So that's where it comes from. It's not baked in. Just the gem will be included for you when you start a new project. So, oh yeah, and while we're going through this, please, if you have any questions, comments, shout them out. Or if you don't feel like, turn on your microphone or not in the place where you can right now or don't have one, just throw it into the chat. I'll be watching the chat as well. And yeah, we'll tackle any questions you have as soon as I see them. So yeah, so Sass is Syntactically Awesome Style Sheets, and it's a CSS extension language. So it builds on top of CSS, fixes some of its problems, what people consider problems, and generally makes it better. There's some real nice things that Sass lets you do. It's not the only what's called preprocessor out there. You may have heard of Less as well. Does similar things with a little bit different syntax. So there's a few different things. Post CSS is also out there as well. But really, Sass, I think, is the biggest player right now and the most widely used. So figured we'd look at it. So why would we not want to use CSS? Yes. So one of the biggest reasons is it is so not dry. We often need to repeat big lines of selectors as we target deeper and deeper and deeper into nested items. And we also can't store things as variables. So if we want to keep a whole bunch of things, the same color, we're going to need to go change them one by one everywhere in the CSS file. So, let's say our header was blue. We had that color set in CSS, and we also had, okay, well, we want the header to be the same color as, a drop-down menu, the same color as all of our buttons, the same color as all of our highlight text, the same color as a background for something else. And then we decide, okay, we really don't like blue. We're doing a rebrand. We have to go and change that in every single place it occurs. And that can be very, very cumbersome. So another thing is large chunks of style like that, like I gave the example of just one color, but there's, it could be a background color, a foreground color, a text color, maybe the same, hover of things and quick variables and such like that might be repeated all over the place. So now we're taking this, 5 lines of code and repeating them over and over and over again, just so that we can have consistency. And we can continue going on and on and on with examples, but I think those are some good ones. So Sass comes in and will solve lots of these problems for us. And also, it's cool to use something that's more than just baseline CSS. So all we have to do to use Sass in our Rails app is get into our assets folder. So if you're not in Rails yet, don't worry. You don't have to understand really any of the Rails part. It's just a place that we're putting the folder so that it gets read properly. There is, the Sass gem is going to compile, so it's going to transform the Sass that we write into CSS so that the browser just sees CSS, because all that a browser can read is CSS. So we're going to use this CSS extension language called Sass, and we're going to run it through its processor, and it's going to compile it, build up some plain old CSS, and that's what the browser is going to see. And should be able to illustrate that tonight. And that's why I spun up a Rails app, just to show what comes out the other side. So all we have to do is go into our app asset style sheets folder where I'm at right now.
So,
and yeah, go ahead.
Hey, sorry, a little quick question, Sass. So is Sass kind of like a DSL? I mean, I don't know if you said this. I jumped in a little bit late.
Kind of. I guess it's similar in that aspect, but it doesn't actually have any new methods or anything, I would say. It's all still just CSS. It's just how you use the CSS. So, like, we'll see we can nest objects or nest stylings, and all we're doing is an indent, but we're still just writing plain old CSS.
Cool. I guess I'll see as you go on.
Yeah, no problem. Good question, though. Yeah, but it's I guess it's similar when you think about like kind of how to frame it, but I don't think it goes as far as what a DSL is.
Gotcha.
So yeah, we can make a file in here. Let's just create a new file. We can call it, let's just call it our style. And we're going to do .scss. You can see my little icon thing through Sass, a little Sass icon on there. And now we have a Sass file. And that's all that we needed to do. We now have a valid Sass file that's going to be in our application and used. Let's see. I haven't used Skeleton in a long time, or Scaffold, so let's see what we actually have here. If we can style something. If not, I'll pull something real quick. Oh. Okay, got that. Use. Okay. Let's make never use Scaffold, Rails, Scaffold. What is it again? Rails new. Full set of models database. Yeah. Rails generate Scaffold. There we go. We'll just do that. Scaffolds do more than we typically almost always would like, so we almost never use them because they do everything for us, and that can be troublesome when we need to have some control over things. So there we go. Now we have some views in here. High scores. Okay, let's see what we got at high scores. Oh, I stopped the server. Oops. I don't think I won't need this window anymore once I get it going. Migration. All right. DB migrate. Okay. There we go. That should do what we need. Okay, cool. So now we have some things in here that we can put styling on. So let's inspect. We have an H1, we have a table, which is very old school. Nobody really uses tables anymore. And a link. Okay, cool. So we have some things some elements that we can target going forward. Let's get back to, we already also have a Sass file created for us. So I'm going to go with that one. I'm going to assume that it associates, pretty sure it does. Like I said, I don't ever use the scaffold. So we'll see. Just want to minimize that. There we go. All right. There we go. We got some Sass ready to go. We have something to look at. And then we'll also look at the CSS that actually get generated. This bunch already. Let's see. Let's get rid of this. We should see nothing now. There we go. No styling. Okay. First going to use this high scores SCSS. Now, all CSS is also valid SCSS, Sass. So we can start out by writing CSS just like we normally would and slowly make our way into using more and more of the SCSS. So we can, just do our simple selector. And then let's go, let's say font, family, and, let's just pick one of these. Let's say this one. And we see it change. So we can just write plain old CSS and it will work just fine. Now, let's say, we want to use this font family on more than just our H1. Let's say we want to use it on also our, what do we have here? Our TH element in our table. We want the game score to be the same, but maybe we want something different for our links. So we only want to target these elements and this element. So right now, with CSS, we'd be doing this. As we said before, not very dry. So one of the first things that I'm going to show you is variables in Sass. So set a variable, just use a $sign. And that means, okay, this is going to be a variable. And then we can say, sculpt font, sans. These are all sans fonts. And in here, we can set what we want it to be. Excuse me. And then just call that variable here. So let's do that. And just like that, nothing will change. And our page still looks just the same. And when we look at our CSS over here in our inspector, we see that it compiles down to just like what we had before. Actually, I'm going to jump back so we can look at it and see that it looks exactly the same. Targeting the H1, we have an H1 font family. And then we do Control-Y. We set up Sass with a variable, and we still have looks just the same font family. It's compiling down to that plain old CSS. Yes, so much easier than regular old CSS. Excuse me. So that's the first thing. I'm going to try and go through, some of the most useful. Sass has so many things it can do. I started learning it there was like this thing that was like a Sass thing a day, and it was like a letter of the alphabet, and there was something in Sass that corresponded with that letter. So like variables would be V, and there's just so many things. So I'm going to try and cover the most, I think, useful for you at this point in time, so that you don't have to, get too overwhelmed with it. But yeah, so that is a great one. Let's also target our body in here and just get some stuff. Let's say main color. Let's set that equal to something. I think that's like a grayish, right? No, that's red. We don't want that. Maybe another. That'll be all right.
Well, like a bunch of C's is gray or something.
Let's see. Yeah, that'll be better. And then let's just set a background color. Just want to have some more things to play with as we go along. There we go. So we're seeing some of our styling. If we look at the body, let's just see background color. So the question is, can we move TH besides H1 to be more dry? And yes, I guess this isn't the best example, but if we wanted to say, make our H1 red, I guess I'm red. Oh, I'm missing my, I thought that was, and the TH, that's where we start running into issues. And that's a better example of showing how this is drying things up. That was just harsh. Okay, not the easiest to see, but we're not trying to have a great design here this evening. So yes, we could have done that a second ago, but this is more the example. I think this is a better example case of why we would want to use that variable to set something like that. So I hope that makes it a little bit clearer now. But yes, before, you're completely right. We could have had the CSS selectors H1 and TH right next to each other, and it would have been drier. So by default, I'm going to look at a little piece of Rails. Rails is loading our files in the asset pipeline using this require self, require tree, statement. And this loads each file separately in a specific order. So we had another one in here, we could say, you know, require scores, and then it would be requiring first, or it would be importing, or loading the high scores first, then all the other files in the style sheets folder. So then lastly, the file that we're currently looking at, this application.css folder. So this require self is requiring its own file. So this is fine for the most part, but it also means that because each file is being treated as a separate file, any variables that are declared in one file will not be visible in any other file. So they're all isolated from each other. So to change that, we can actually update this, and we can change this to an SCSS file. It'll work just fine. And do something called an import. So what happens is we do and you use it instead of a require command. So at import, we can import high scores. And then let's say we did at import another Sass file. What's going to happen here is by doing things this way, this main color variable is going to be available to this Sass file. So we can set up all of our variables. I've seen this done because projects will have lots of variables. Just have, you know, a variables Sass file, and it just lists all your variables. It makes it easy to find them, to see them, to change them. They're all local. They're all centralized in one place, and then you can import them, and they're shared throughout the project. Now, so the variables will be available to any file that is imported afterwards. So an important note is that this method is going to be used instead of the require comments. So this also is going to require that we're importing our style sheets for each style sheet in our project. Nothing is going to be automatically loaded once we start using these imports. Now, something that we can do if we want to is we can build out our sheets, our Sass files, in a nested structure as well. So we don't have to keep everything in this root directory. We can slowly build containing folders, and put that in there. And we can do something like this, where we take that out of here. We can import it into here. And get that file, excuse me, and get that file. And we can build it that way. So we can have kind of, you know, a base Sass file and then just continue on, or we can just build everything into that one one folder and import it all into the application.scss. And in the end, it's all taken care of there for us. But it's really just structuring however you really want to. Everybody's going to have their own best practice, I think, in that based on their experience. Yeah, so just going to simplify this down now that I've shown that. That's good. And get rid of this folder. Just clean up a little bit. Okay. It's at import working the same way as at media in responsive design. Not that I remember, because from what I'd have to look at exactly what at media is again. I don't use it enough. But from my understanding, at media, let's see. At media is a CSS rule which can be used to apply styles based on the result of one or more media queries, which test a device type, specific characteristics, and environment. So at media is a specific CSS rule that is going to target specific device or device-specific things and then apply rules based on that. Whereas at import is just saying, bring me the Sass that's in this file so I can use it. So just saying, it's like, if we wrote, it's like, if this, okay, I know how I can illustrate. At import high scores is like taking this right here, copying it, and pasting it here. It's just saying, bring it to me, and let's use it. It's very similar to like modules in JavaScript, if you're familiar with those or at that point. In JavaScript, you can write JavaScript in one file and import it into another file and use everything that's written in that other file in your current file you're working with. So now let's look at nesting selectors. Let's find a good thing. Target. I guess nothing here is too complex. So we'll just show a good example. So typically, if we wanted to reference everything's unique in this. Let's give some things IDs. That'll give us some stuff to target better. And it, this, I don't think we have any games yet. No. So let's game and for here. Okay. Now we have some nested selectors. We have this ID, a couple IDs. Okay, so now we have some things we can target. So now if we wanted to target, you know, this specific thing, then we're going to need a nested selector because, well, I guess we wouldn't technically get because they're unique. Let's make them the same. Just call them title. And IDs are supposed to be unique, so let's say class. There we go. And we'll give, there's a class of title too. Now, if we want to target these, we can't just style the class title because we're going to style the H1 as well, and we don't want that. The precedence rules are ID is more specific than class because ID is only supposed to be assigned to an individual element. So you're not supposed to reuse IDs. IDs are supposed to be unique, whereas classes can be used all over the place. So now that we have some things that are nested, let's say we wanted to target this class. So if we went to, let's see where we are. We have 3 THs. We only want to do these 2. If we do this, we don't want to style this one. We just want to style these 2. So to style that class, in our example, and not style the title, the H1, what we do is we go into our current style and we tab in to where we're typically writing our styles, and we select that what we're looking for. So that is going to be the class of title. And let's say, let's give it padding. 3M and 1M. Let's see what we get. Okay, and here's our CSS. We see that our CSS is compiled down, and the CSS is actually getting compiled to 2 separate things. We have our TH style, and we have our TH.title, or our TH and our title. So that nesting has been turned in. However, the way that we use it and write it is just by nesting it like we would nest other things just for organization purposes inside of the other selector. So we see it takes it, let's go make this bigger, and we end up with vanilla CSS right here. This is the CSS file that Rails is outputting for us. And we see it right here. This is the full CSS in the project. We're seeing the top of the application that SPSS is saved to. Guess we can get rid of that to keep that a little bit cleaner. There we go. Something to know is it is considered bad practice to nest more than 3 layers deep. So another thing that we can do, if we're trying to be even more specific in our selectors, is we can reference a parent selector. So sometimes we'll be in some nested code, nested styling, like we are here. And we'll want to reference the parent selector we're currently nested inside of. And to do this, we use the, what is it? Completely forgetting its name. Ampersand? The and symbol. Now, this will get replaced with a parent selector that we're currently nested inside of. And this can be useful when putting some styling on multiple things at once, including the parent selector. So if we did this, we'll see that this will compile down to this selector, the th.title, as well as the th. That's a pretty nifty one to use when you're trying to do things. It also can be very useful for referencing and this is where I've seen it most often, let's say the state of objects. So let's go ahead and throw some styling on our link. Give it color blue, very standard. Let's get rid of the line, text decoration. And here, let's do an at or an and cover. And set up underline. And let's see what that outputs for us. So we'll see in a very succinct and concise way, we're able to create those two styles. And in our Sass, very easy looking, especially as we're referencing things that are more complex than just an A. You know, an A would be very simple to put there, but that's not always going to be the case. So the and sign referencing the parent is something that can be very useful. And I've seen many times used, especially with links or actions, so hovers and things like that, because you're going to want them to be specifically on the parent to change some things. Okay, let's see some other good things. We'll look at mix-ins and arguments, and I think that will bring us to a good amount of time tonight and a good little bit of stuff to start playing with. How did it know where you wanted to place the A within your HTML? It didn't. There's only one link on the page right now. So if we look at our inspector, we have this singular link. It's just the only one. So if we had another link, that would also be happening. I think that this is still doing stuff. There's two, and they're fighting with each other. There we go. Yeah. So yeah. So variables allow us to define and reuse values, and mix-ins will allow us to define and reuse chunks of code. So like I was talking about at the beginning, when you might have a set of styles that you want to use in different places and be able to change that group all at once without having to go all over the place. So let's say, I don't know that I have enough content on this page, but we'll just go through and look at what the code looks like and what it compiles to. We might not, I don't think we'll might see these actual things. No, I guess we can. Okay, so create a mix-in. We start with at mix-in. Let's call this one title style. And we can have a margin. Let's say font family. What do we have up there? Font and or let's create another one so we had some variation. Font serif. And if the dropdown is not there because it doesn't, that's a variable. Okay, font family. There we go. I guess serif and sans are the same thing. Let's just do this one. Or I guess they're not. Coming out of typography first. There. Font serif. Font size. That as well. Go font weight. Bold. And let's connect it up. Cool. So now that we have this chunk of code, anywhere that we want to apply all these things, we can add it in. So let's say we got this header. Let's get rid of that. We're not going to want to include that. And we can say at include title style. Oh, the we should see our high scores look a little bit differently. Yep. And we see that our H1 has all of those things included in it. We don't see any mention of that mix-in. We just see that. So if we wanted to say, you know, make our links like that too, do at include title style. There we go. All of it's included in there, then a color and the text decoration. So very easy to reuse. And then if we want to change something, oh, we don't like that it's bold anymore. Let's get rid of that. No problem. And it changes across the multiple things. This one looks like it's still bold, and that's because it's a H1, which is just doing that because it's the header. So now the last thing I want to show you is mix-ins with argument. If you saw when I was getting those mix-ins with on the include, and you know my IntelliSense was picking up what they were, and it was putting some parentheses at the end of it. It looked like a function or a method, and that's because we can pass arguments to mix in. So let's say we didn't want to be stuck with just this font. You know, maybe we want to say, okay, sometimes we want to use sans, sometimes we want to use serif in this title style. We can do that. So we can create that here, and let's say font. And then here, we change to that argument. So now what we pass in, and multiple arguments will work too. So we can say color, or here as well. I'm just going to keep it at 1, but multiples do work. Now we can say, you know, let's use this. So where's our title style? We have that here. Say, okay, for the H1, we want to give it font sans. And for the A, we want font serif. We can pass that argument in, and it will use them. So let's go look at that. In our CSS, we see in our H1, we have the sans serif font, and we have in the A, the serif font. Something else that we can do, one last thing, and then I'll take questions and kind of wrap up, is we can define default values for these things too. So let's say, oh no, somebody uses title style and doesn't pass an argument in for a font. We can put a colon here and set a font that we want. Let's say Geneva. It's one that we're using anyway, but so I just don't know. Hold on. Off the top of my head. So we're setting a default of Geneva, and in our H1, we're not passing an argument. If we look at our H1, the font family is set to Geneva, the default. So it can allow us to set, okay, this is what we like most of the time, but we want to have the flexibility to here and there change it to something. But we still want all the rest of this stuff. The only thing that we want different is going to be the font or whatever value, whatever CSS that we're doing. So that is just the tip of the iceberg of what Sass is, what it can do, how it works. Like I said, if any new Rails project that you do Rails new with is going to have that Rails gem installed. Sass is available across everything, so you just have to find how to add it into your projects. If you're doing, the React stuff, it's definitely available to add into those to a React project pretty simply. So not as straightforward as this, but still not very difficult. So we went through setting some variables and using them. Went through looking at inheritance through indentation. We looked at mix-ins and how to add them to things with includes. We also looked at passing arguments to mix-ins and then using those arguments, and also setting default values for arguments. And then outside of that, we looked a little bit at importing into the asset pipeline, as well as some ways that we could import from file to file. So now that we've been through that, any questions, any comments that you have, feel free. I've got about, looks like 7 minutes right now until the end of the hour. So I'm just going to open it up for anything that you might be wondering about. There's a ton in Sass. I really don't know it all. So there's probably, if you ask me if something's possible, I'm probably going to say probably, because I don't know. Let me throw some links into the chat also. I'll make sure these links are still good. Yeah, I thought so. This Sass Master is going to show you what Sass, when you write some Sass on the left side, it's going to convert it to CSS on the right. You can see what's going on with it. The Sass homepage is also a great resource. sass-lang.com. Throw that into the chat. If you want a whole long list of resources, this awesome Sass list is solid on GitHub. That's probably more than you could ever get through. I won't say ever, but more than you could get through quickly. I'm not seeing any questions, so one more thing before I say thank you. I'm going to throw one more link into the chat. This is a very quick, I think I looked at it, 7-question survey that we have started doing here at Flatiron. specifically for study groups. We want to make sure that we are constantly improving, getting feedback, finding out ways that we can do things better. So please, I ask if you would fill that out. It's anonymous. You just fill it out and, give your honest opinions and feedback about this specific study group. And that would be very useful for us as a team, and moving forward, continuing to do our best to create great and engaging content for you guys. But that is the last thing that I have. Unless you have any other questions, I'll say thank you very much for stopping in tonight and spending some time learning about Sass. Hope that it makes your life a little bit easier when you really start diving into styling stuff and more complex applications and pages out there that have nested objects and such, and you really want to target them and keep your styles dry, just like keep your code dry. But that's what I got tonight. So thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Seth.
Cool. Thanks, Seth.
You're welcome.